The announcement crackled through the airport terminal like a death sentence to Harper Greene's carefully constructed weekend plans. Flight 447 to Miami canceled due to mechanical failure. No alternative flights available until Monday morning. Harper stared at the departure board in disbelief, her carry-on bag slipping from her shoulder to the ground with a muted thud. Friday evening at JFK, the busiest travel time of the week, and she was supposed to be presenting her restaurant's new seasonal menu to potential investors in Miami tomorrow afternoon. 6 months of recipe development, menu planning, and pitch preparation, all about to evaporate because of a faulty hydraulic system or whatever mechanical excuse they were feeding passengers. She pulled out her phone and started frantically searching for alternatives. Every airline showed the same soul-crushing message: fully booked. The spring break travel surge had filled every available seat on every carrier. Private charter services quoted her prices that made her eyes water, numbers that would consume her entire presentation budget, and then some. "This cannot be happening," she muttered, refreshing the search results for the 5th time as if the internet might suddenly conjure an available seat out of thin air. "Rough day." The voice came from her left, warm and tinged with genuine sympathy, rather than the hollow politeness strangers usually offered. Harper looked up to find a man standing a few feet away, tall and broad-shouldered, probably in his early 30s, wearing dark jeans and a charcoal Henley that looked effortlessly expensive. His brown hair was slightly tousled, and his gray eyes held an alert intelligence that suggested he was actually interested in her answer rather than just making small talk. "Canceled flight," Harper said, gesturing helplessly at the departure board. And apparently every other human in North America decided they needed to fly south this weekend. "Miami?" he asked, nodding toward her bag, which had a conference tag still attached from her last trip. "How did you?" He pointed at the tag with a slight smile. "Detective skills." "I'm heading to Miami myself. Private plane." He paused, seeming to weigh his next words carefully. "I have empty seats if you need a lift." Harper blinked. In what universe did a stranger at an airport just offer someone a ride on their private plane? This had to be some kind of scam or worse. She took a small step back, her mind racing through every true crime podcast she had ever listened to. The man seemed to read her hesitation immediately and held up both hands in a gesture of peace. "That sounded incredibly sketchy, I realize. I'm Preston Irving. I own a manufacturing company, and I'm flying down for a business meeting tomorrow." He pulled out his phone, tapped the screen a few times, and turned it toward her, showing what appeared to be a legitimate business website with his photo and biography. "The plane's already scheduled to leave in about an hour from the private terminal. You'd have your own space, and there's a flight attendant and 2 pilots, completely professional and safe." Harper studied the website, her skepticism warring with desperation. Preston Irving, CEO of Irving Industrial Solutions, a company that apparently designed and manufactured specialized equipment for construction projects. The website looked legitimate, professional, exactly the kind of boring corporate presence a real business would have. She did a quick mental calculation of her options. Spend the weekend in New York and miss the presentation that could make or break her restaurant's expansion plans, or take a calculated risk with a stranger who had kind eyes and a verifiable online presence. "I can give you the number for my assistant, my attorney. Anyone you want to call to verify I'm not a serial killer," Preston added. "Or you can follow the plane's tail number through the FAA. Whatever would make you feel safe." The fact that he was offering verification without her even asking somehow made it feel more legitimate. Harper chewed her bottom lip, thinking. She pulled up the company website on her own phone, cross-referenced it with a few business databases, and found consistent information. Preston Irving, 32 years old, took over his father's manufacturing company 5 years ago and had grown it into a major player in the industrial equipment sector. "Why would you offer a ride to a complete stranger?" Harper asked, studying his face for any hint of ulterior motive. Preston shrugged, the gesture loose and natural. "My flight path doesn't change whether there's one person on board or 5. You need to get to Miami, and I have the means to help. Seems straightforward to me." There was something disarmingly honest in his delivery, no false charm or obvious agenda. Harper had spent years working in restaurants, reading people across dining room tables, and her instincts were usually solid. Everything about this man suggested genuine kindness rather than danger. "Okay," she heard herself say. "Thank you, that's incredibly generous." Preston's smile widened, transforming his face from merely handsome to genuinely warm. "Great. The car's waiting outside. Have you eaten? We can grab something before takeoff if you're hungry." 20 minutes later, Harper found herself in the back of a black SUV heading toward the private aviation terminal, still half convinced she had made a terrible decision. But Preston kept up an easy stream of conversation, asking about her work, sharing stories about disastrous business trips he had experienced, making her laugh with his self-deprecating humor about the time he had given a presentation with his shirt on inside out, and nobody told him until lunch. "You own a restaurant?" he asked, genuine interest lighting his features. "What kind?" "Modern American with French technique," Harper said, relaxing slightly. Talking about her work always calmed her nerves. "We focus on seasonal ingredients, local sourcing when possible." "I'm the head chef and owner. Well, co-owner. My business partner handles the front of house and business operations while I run the kitchen. And the Miami trip, potential investors for a second location. We've been looking at spaces in Coral Gables. Tomorrow's presentation could determine whether we expand or stay small." Preston nodded thoughtfully. "High stakes, then. Good thing you won't miss it." The private terminal was a revelation. No crowds, no security lines that snaked through the building like frustrated serpents. No gate agents with forced smiles and dead eyes. Just a sleek lobby, a quick verification of identification, and then they were walking across the tarmac toward a gleaming white jet with blue accents. Harper had never been on a private plane before. The interior was nothing like the cramped commercial cabins she was used to. Cream leather seats that looked more like living room furniture than airplane seats, polished wood accents, soft lighting that felt welcoming rather than institutional. A woman in a crisp uniform greeted them with actual warmth in her voice. "Mr. Irving, welcome aboard, and you must be our additional passenger. I'm Jennifer. I'll be taking care of you this evening." Preston gestured for Harper to choose her seat, and she selected one near a window, sinking into leather so soft it felt like butter. He took a seat across the aisle, giving her space while staying close enough for conversation. "First time on a private plane?" he asked, clearly reading her wide-eyed examination of the cabin. "That obvious. You have the same look I had the first time my dad let me tag along on a business trip. I spent the whole flight just staring at everything." Jennifer appeared with a tray of drinks, sparkling water, and what looked like genuine glassware rather than plastic cups. "We'll be taking off in about 15 minutes. The flight time is approximately 2 hours and 45 minutes. Can I get either of you anything else? Dinner, perhaps?" Harper realized she had skipped lunch in her rush to get to the airport and was actually starving. "What are the options? We have grilled salmon with roasted vegetables, chicken piccata, or a vegetarian pasta primavera." "The salmon sounds amazing. "Thank you." Preston ordered the chicken, and Jennifer disappeared toward what Harper assumed was a galley somewhere in the plane. The engines hummed to life with a low, powerful sound that was somehow smoother than the roar of commercial jets. "So," Harper said, turning to face Preston more fully, "what does Irving Industrial Solutions actually do? The website mentioned construction equipment, but that covers a lot of ground." His face lit up the way hers did when someone asked about her cooking. "We design and manufacture specialized lifting systems and material handling equipment for large-scale construction projects. Cranes, hoists, custom rigging solutions. My grandfather started the company doing basic metalwork. My dad expanded into construction equipment, and I've been focusing on innovation and sustainability. We're working on a new line of electric-powered systems that reduce job site emissions." "That sounds complicated." "It is, but it's fascinating. Every project is different. Last month, we designed a custom lifting system for a historical renovation where they needed to replace steel beams without damaging the original brick facade. It was like a three-dimensional puzzle." Harper found herself genuinely engaged as Preston described his work, his hands moving expressively as he explained technical challenges and creative solutions. He had the kind of enthusiasm that made complex topics accessible, and she could see the sharp intelligence behind his casual demeanor. The plane taxied and lifted into the air so smoothly that Harper barely registered the moment they left the ground. Through the window, the lights of New York spread below them like a glittering carpet, gradually giving way to darkness as they climbed higher. Jennifer served dinner on actual china plates with metal silverware, and Harper had to admit the salmon was perfectly cooked, probably better than most commercial airline food, though that was an admittedly low bar. Preston asked thoughtful questions about her restaurant, about the challenges of running a kitchen, about her culinary training. She found herself telling him about her path from culinary school to various restaurant jobs to finally opening her own place 3 years ago, about the terror and exhilaration of putting her name and vision on the line every single night. "The thing about owning a restaurant that nobody tells you," Harper said, gesturing with her fork, "is that it's never done. You're never finished. There's always a new problem, a new opportunity, something that needs your attention. Equipment breaks down, staff has emergencies, suppliers run short. You have to love it enough to handle the chaos." "Sounds like running any business," Preston said. "Last week, our manufacturing floor had a power surge that fried 3 computer systems. The week before, our largest client threatened to pull a contract over a delayed shipment that was actually delayed because of their own specification changes. It's constant problem solving." "Do you love it?" He considered the question, taking a sip of wine. "Most days, yes. I love the creation aspect, the innovation. The administrative headaches I could do without, but that comes with the territory. What about you? Do you still love cooking, or has owning the restaurant killed the joy?" "I still love it," Harper said without hesitation. "There are nights when I'm exhausted and everything hurts, and I question every life choice I've ever made. But then someone sends back a compliment to the chef, or I nail a new recipe, or I see the satisfaction on my team's face when service goes perfectly, and I remember why I do this." They talked through the rest of dinner, and after, the conversation flowing easily from topic to topic. Preston was surprisingly easy to talk to, with a self-awareness that she rarely found in successful businessmen. He asked questions and actually listened to the answers, building on what she said rather than just waiting for his turn to speak. He was funny without trying too hard, confident without arrogance, intelligent without condescension. Harper realized with some surprise that she was genuinely enjoying herself. What had started as a desperate necessity was turning into one of the more pleasant evenings she had experienced in months. The restaurant consumed most of her time and energy, leaving little room for a social life, and she had forgotten what it felt like to just talk with someone interesting without an agenda or time pressure. "Can I ask you something?" Harper said as Jennifer cleared their plates. "Why did you really offer me a ride? And don't say it's just because the seat was empty. Nobody's that altruistic without a reason." Preston was quiet for a moment, his expression thoughtful. "Honest answer. My dad died 2 years ago. Sudden heart attack, no warning. He was a difficult man in a lot of ways, but one thing he taught me was that when you have resources, you use them to help people when you can. He used to pick up hitchhikers, pay for strangers' groceries, that kind of thing. Drove my mom crazy because she worried about safety, but he said he'd rather take the risk of helping someone who might not deserve it than miss the chance to help someone who really needed it." He met her eyes. "You looked genuinely stressed in that terminal, and I had the means to solve your problem. It seemed simple." The answer was so unexpectedly genuine that Harper felt her throat tighten. "I'm sorry about your dad. Thank you. Running the company without him has been challenging, but I think he'd be proud of what we've built." Preston smiled, but there was sadness behind it. "He'd definitely approve of me offering you a ride. He was always doing stuff like this." They landed in Miami just before 9, the descent as smooth as the takeoff. A car was waiting for Preston, and he offered Harper a ride to her hotel, which she accepted with less hesitation this time. The Miami night was warm and humid, a welcome change from the lingering New York chill. "Where are you staying?" Preston asked as they settled into another luxury SUV. "The Marriott in Coral Gables. It's close to where my meeting is tomorrow. I'm at the Four Seasons downtown, but Coral Gables is on the way." They drove through Miami streets, palm trees lit from below, Art Deco buildings glowing in shades of pink and blue and green. Harper felt the adrenaline of the evening starting to fade, exhaustion creeping in at the edges. But it was a pleasant tiredness, the kind that came after an unexpectedly good experience rather than a stressful ordeal. The car pulled up in front of her hotel, and Preston walked her into the lobby, a gesture that felt courteous rather than presumptuous. "Thank you," Harper said, turning to face him. "Really? You saved my entire trip, possibly my expansion plans. I don't know how to repay that kind of generosity." "No repayment necessary," Preston said. His gray eyes were warm in the lobby lighting. "But I wouldn't object to having dinner while we're both in Miami, if you're interested. No pressure." Harper felt a flutter in her chest that had nothing to do with travel stress. "I'd like that. My presentation is at 2 tomorrow, should be done by 4. Tomorrow evening, perfect." "I'll text you." He pulled out his phone. "What's your number?" They exchanged information, and Preston gave her a smile that made her pulse quicken. "Good luck with your presentation. Those investors would be fools not to back you. Good luck with your meeting, too." He lifted a hand in farewell and headed back to the waiting car. Harper watched him go, then made her way to the check-in desk, her mind spinning. In the span of a few hours, her disastrous evening had transformed into something entirely different. She had expected to spend the weekend frustrated and disappointed in New York. Instead, she was in Miami. Her presentation was still happening, and she had somehow met a man who was both genuinely kind and undeniably attractive. Her hotel room was pleasant but unremarkable, standard business hotel furnishings and a view of the parking garage. Harper unpacked her garment bag, hung up her presentation outfit, and set her alarm for early morning. She needed to review her pitch materials and make sure everything was perfect. But as she got ready for bed, her phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Made it to the hotel safely. Looking forward to dinner tomorrow. Preston. Harper saved his contact information and responded. Same, thank you again for everything. She fell asleep with a smile on her face. The stress of the day replaced by anticipation for what came next. Morning arrived too early, but Harper woke with focused energy. She went for a run through Coral Gables, the streets lined with banyan trees and Mediterranean Revival architecture, then returned to shower and review her presentation materials one more time. Her business partner Nadia had helped her put together a comprehensive pitch, market analysis, financial projections, sample menus, design concepts for the new location. Everything was solid. The presentation itself went better than Harper had dared to hope. The three potential investors listened attentively as she walked through her vision, asked intelligent questions, and seemed genuinely impressed by her responses. When she described her philosophy of combining classical technique with innovative flavor profiles, using seasonal ingredients to create dishes that felt both familiar and surprising, she could see them leaning forward with interest. We'll be in touch early next week, the lead investor said as they wrapped up. But I'll tell you now, this is the most compelling restaurant pitch I've seen in the last 2 years. Your track record speaks for itself, and your vision for expansion is sound. Harper left the meeting feeling like she was floating. It wasn't a definite yes, but it was as close as she could hope for without a signed contract. She called Nadia immediately. They loved it, Harper said as soon as her partner answered. I mean, they didn't commit on the spot, but the feedback was incredibly positive. I knew you'd kill it, Nadia said, and Harper could hear the grin in her voice. Did you mention the farm partnerships we've been developing? Spent a good 10 minutes on sourcing strategy. They ate it up. Harper paused. Also, something weird happened yesterday. She recounted the story of the canceled flight, the unexpected offer from Preston, the private jet to Miami. Nadia listened without interrupting, which was unusual. So let me get this straight, Nadia said when Harper finished. A hot millionaire offered you a ride on his private jet. You accepted. He was a perfect gentleman, and now you're going to dinner with him tonight. That's the summary, yes. Harper, this is literally a romance novel plot. It's just dinner, Harper protested, but even she could hear the lack of conviction in her voice. Sure it is. Text me later and tell me how just dinner goes. They hung up after discussing a few business items, and Harper spent the rest of the afternoon exploring Coral Gables, looking at potential neighborhoods for the new restaurant location, and trying not to obsess over what to wear to dinner. She finally settled on a navy dress that was elegant without being overly formal, paired with simple jewelry and heels that wouldn't cripple her if they ended up walking anywhere. Preston texted at 5. My meeting finished early. Would 6:30 work for dinner? I made a reservation at a place I think you'll appreciate. Harper confirmed, and at 6:20 a car pulled up in front of her hotel. Preston stepped out and Harper felt her breath catch. He was wearing dark slacks and a white button-down with the sleeves rolled to his forearms, looking polished but not stuffy. When he saw her, his face lit up with a smile that made her glad she had spent extra time on her appearance. You look beautiful, he said, offering his arm. How did the presentation go? Really well. They seemed genuinely interested. I never doubted it. The restaurant Preston had chosen was a small, intimate place in the design district, the kind of spot locals loved and tourists never found. The chef came out to greet them personally, shaking Preston's hand and welcoming Harper with warm enthusiasm. Preston called and told me you're a fellow chef, the chef said. It's an honor to cook for you. Dinner was extraordinary. Course after course of innovative, beautifully executed dishes that showed both technical skill and creative vision. Harper found herself in her element, analyzing flavors and techniques, discussing food philosophy with both Preston and occasional visits from the chef. "This is incredible," Harper said after a dish featuring local fish with a mango and habanero sauce. "The balance of heat and sweet is perfect." "I thought you'd appreciate it," Preston said. "I ate here last time I was in Miami and immediately thought of you when I was making the reservation." "You thought of me. We just met. You told me about your approach to cooking. This seemed aligned with your philosophy." The fact that he had remembered details from their conversation, had considered what she might enjoy, touched Harper more than an expensive wine or elaborate gesture would have. They talked through dinner, the conversation ranging from food to travel to childhood memories to future ambitions. Preston told her about taking over the company at 30, the pressure and excitement of stepping into his father's legacy. Harper shared stories about the chaos of opening night at her restaurant, the absolute terror when the first food critic review came out, the joy when they received their first award. "You ever want something other than the restaurant?" Preston asked over dessert. "Not instead of, but in addition to," Harper considered the question. "I want a life outside of work, but I've been so focused on building the business that I haven't made much room for anything else. My friends are mostly people in the industry. My schedule makes traditional relationships difficult. I keep telling myself I'll find balance once things stabilize, but I'm starting to suspect that's a myth." "It is a myth," Preston said. "I've been telling myself the same thing for 5 years. There's always one more project, one more deadline, one more crisis that needs attention. You have to actively decide to make space for other things. Otherwise, work expands to fill every available moment." "Have you made space for other things?" "I'm trying to." His gray eyes held hers across the table. "This is a good start." The air between them felt charged, heavy with possibility. Harper's heart was beating faster than it should for someone sitting still in a restaurant. After dinner, they walked through the design district, past galleries and boutiques closed for the evening, string lights overhead creating pockets of warm glow. The Miami night was perfect, warm without being oppressive, a light breeze carrying the scent of jasmine from somewhere nearby. "Can I confess something?" Preston said as they walked. "When I offered you that ride yesterday, I thought you were going to either run away or pepper spray me. You had this look like you were calculating the exact risk of accepting help from a stranger." Harper laughed. "I was calculating exactly that. I listen to a lot of true crime podcasts. They don't encourage accepting rides from strangers at airports. Yet you took a chance. My desperation outweighed my caution, and you seemed genuine." "I was genuine. I am genuine." Preston stopped walking and turned to face her. "Harper, I know we just met, and this might be moving fast, but I have to tell you I haven't connected with someone like this in a long time. Maybe ever. I know you live in New York and I'm in Boston, and logistics are complicated, but I'd like to see where this goes. If you're interested." Boston. She hadn't even asked where he was based. Boston was a manageable distance from New York, closer than she might have expected. Harper thought about all the reasons this was impractical, all the complications of starting something with someone who lived in a different city, who had a demanding career, who she had known for less than 24 hours. Then she thought about how she felt when she was with him. The ease of conversation, the genuine interest, the way he made her laugh, the kindness he showed not just to her but to everyone they encountered. The flutter in her chest when he looked at her the way he was looking at her right now. "I'm interested," Harper said. Preston's smile was bright enough to rival the string lights above them. He stepped closer, one hand coming up to cup her cheek, giving her every opportunity to pull away. Harper leaned into the touch instead, rising on her toes as he bent down to kiss her. The kiss was soft at first, tentative, a question being asked and answered. Then it deepened, and Harper felt heat spread through her entire body. Preston's arms came around her, pulling her closer, and she wrapped her arms around his neck, forgetting they were standing on a public street, forgetting everything except the feel of his mouth on hers and the solid warmth of his body. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Preston rested his forehead against hers. That was worth offering a ride to a stranger. Harper laughed breathlessly. That was worth accepting a ride from a stranger. They walked back to the car hand in hand, and Preston took her back to her hotel. At the entrance, he kissed her again, slower this time, sweeter. "When are you flying back to New York?" he asked. "Sunday afternoon." "You?" "Same. Want to spend tomorrow together." "I know a great beach if you like the ocean." "I'd love that." Saturday dawned bright and clear, perfect weather for a day at the beach. Preston picked her up mid-morning, this time in a convertible rental car, and they drove south along the coast. The beach he chose was less crowded than South Beach, more locals and families than tourists. They spent hours in the sand and surf, talking and laughing, swimming in water so clear Harper could see her toes when she stood knee-deep. Preston was different away from restaurants and business settings, more relaxed, almost playful. He was also, Harper noticed with appreciation, impressively built under his shirt. His shoulders were broad and defined, his chest solid, his arms showing the kind of strength that came from regular physical activity rather than just gym vanity. "You work out, or is manufacturing equipment secretly great exercise?" Harper asked as they floated in the gentle waves. Preston grinned. "I rock climb. There's a good gym in Boston, and I try to get outside for real climbing a few times a year. It's the best stress relief I've found." "That explains a lot. Should I be flattered or concerned that you've been analyzing my physique?" "Definitely flattered." He splashed water at her, and she retaliated, and it turned into a laughing water fight that left them both breathless and grinning like children. They had lunch at a beachside cafe, fresh fish tacos and cold beer, sitting at a picnic table with their feet still sandy and the sun warm on their shoulders. Harper couldn't remember the last time she had taken a full day off just to enjoy herself. No work obligations, no mental to-do lists, just present in the moment with someone who made her happy. "Tell me something most people don't know about you," Preston said, stealing one of her fries. Harper thought about it. "I originally wanted to be a painter. I was actually accepted to art school before I went to culinary school, but I was practical enough to know that making a living as a fine artist was nearly impossible, and I was already spending all my free time cooking anyway. Food became my creative outlet. Do you still paint?" "Not in years. I tell myself I'll pick it back up someday, but there's never time." We're back to the making space conversation. "We are." Harper looked at him, at the genuine interest in his expression. "What about you?" "What don't most people know?" "I wanted to be a teacher. High school math or science. I like the idea of making complex concepts accessible to kids who might otherwise think they weren't smart enough to understand. But my dad needed help with the company, and family loyalty won out." "Do you regret it?" "Some days. But I've found ways to incorporate teaching into what I do. We have an internship program. I mentor engineering students. I give talks at technical schools. It's not the same, but it helps." The sun was starting to lower toward the horizon when they finally packed up and headed back to the car. Harper felt pleasantly exhausted, her skin warm from the sun despite regular sunscreen application, her mind quiet in a way it rarely was. "Dinner tonight?" Preston asked as he drove back toward her hotel. "Or are you sick of me yet?" "Not even close to sick of you. Dinner sounds perfect." This time they chose something more casual, a Cuban place that locals packed for weekend dinners. The food was fantastic, rich and flavorful, portions generous enough to share. They ate and talked until the restaurant was closing, then walked through the warm night streets, reluctant to let the evening end. "I don't want to go back to Boston," Preston admitted as they stood outside her hotel. "I know that's ridiculous because I've known you for 2 days, but this has been one of the best weekends I've had in years." "It's not ridiculous," Harper said. "I feel the same way." She hesitated, then decided to be brave. "Come upstairs with me." Preston's eyes darkened. "Are you sure?" "Very sure." The elevator ride to her floor felt endless. As soon as her hotel room door closed behind them, Preston pulled her into his arms, kissing her with an intensity that made her knees weak. Harper responded with equal fervor, her hands sliding up his chest to his shoulders, pulling him closer. They made their way to the bed, a tangle of searching hands and shed clothing, every touch electric. Preston was attentive and passionate, taking his time, making sure she was with him every step of the way. When they finally came together, it felt right in a way that Harper had rarely experienced, physical intimacy matched with emotional connection. Afterward, they lay tangled in the sheets, Harper's head on Preston's chest, his fingers tracing lazy patterns on her shoulder. "I know we have to figure out logistics," Preston said quietly. "The distance, our schedules, all of it, but I want to try. I want to make this work." "Me too," Harper said. "It won't be easy." Good things rarely are. They fell asleep eventually, wrapped around each other, and woke early to make the most of the few hours they had left before flights. Hotel room service, breakfast in bed, more talking, more kissing, reluctant packing. At the airport, they lingered at the departure area, neither wanting to separate. "Come to Boston next weekend," Preston said. "I'll show you the city, take you climbing if you want, cook you dinner at my place." "You cook?" "I'm competent." "Nothing like your level, but I can handle the basics without poisoning anyone." Harper laughed. "Next weekend might be difficult. We have a full book at the restaurant on Saturday, but maybe the weekend after. I'll take whatever I can get." Preston kissed her softly. "Text me when you land." "Promise." The flight back to New York felt longer than the trip down, even though the time was identical. Harper found herself missing Preston already, which seemed absurd for someone she had known for less than 72 hours. But the connection between them felt real and substantial, not just holiday romance or physical attraction. When she landed at JFK, there was already a text waiting. "Missing you already. Boston in 2 weeks." Harper confirmed, smiling at her phone like a teenager, and headed home to her apartment in Brooklyn. Real life was waiting, the restaurant, her responsibilities, the daily grind. But now there was something else too, something bright and new and full of possibility. The next 2 weeks were a blur of work and anticipation. The investors called with good news. They wanted to move forward with funding the expansion. Harper and Nadia threw themselves into planning, location scouting, design meetings, menu development. It was exciting and exhausting in equal measure. Through it all, Harper and Preston talked constantly. Text messages throughout the day, phone calls in the evening when they both finally stopped working, video chats late at night when they could see each other's faces. They shared details of their days, big and small. Preston sent her photos of a new equipment prototype his team was testing. Harper sent him pictures of a dish she was developing for the new menu. "I miss you," Preston said during one of their late-night calls. "This distance thing is harder than I thought it would be." 2 more days. Harper reminded him. "Then I'm all yours for the weekend. I've been planning. I hope you're ready for a grand tour." Friday finally arrived, and Harper took an afternoon train to Boston, too impatient to wait for evening flights. Preston met her at South Station, and the sight of him waiting on the platform made her heart jump. He was wearing jeans and a leather jacket, looking unfairly handsome, and when she reached him he swept her into a hug that lifted her off her feet. "Finally," he murmured into her hair. "I was starting to think 2 weeks was actually 2 years." "It felt like it," Harper agreed, pulling back just enough to kiss him properly. "Show me Boston." Preston's apartment was in the Back Bay, a renovated brownstone with high ceilings and huge windows that let in floods of natural light. The decor was masculine but not aggressively so, comfortable furniture, good art on the walls, a kitchen that was clearly used for actual cooking rather than just reheating takeout. "This is beautiful," Harper said, walking through the space. "Did you decorate it yourself?" "Mostly. My sister helped with some of the furniture choices because left to my own devices, I would have bought the first thing I saw and called it done. But I picked the art and the layout." They spent the evening at his apartment, Preston cooking dinner as promised. He was right that his skills didn't match hers, but he was competent and thoughtful, making pasta with a sauce that showed attention to technique. They ate at his dining table, talking and laughing, the easy connection from Miami still intact. "Tomorrow I want to take you climbing," Preston said over dessert, which was store-bought gelato served with fresh berries and no apologies. "Nothing too intense, just indoor gym climbing so you can get a feel for it. Does that sound interesting? Terrifying, but in a good way." "I've never climbed before. I'll keep you safe. Promise." The climbing gym was enormous, walls covered with colorful holds, people of all skill levels working routes. Preston was patient and encouraging, teaching Harper the basics of belaying and movement, staying close as she made her first tentative attempts at the beginner wall. "Don't muscle through it," he coached from below. "Climbing is about technique and balance more than strength. Use your legs." Harper focused on the holds, the puzzle of how to move her body up the wall, and found herself actually enjoying the challenge. When she reached the top of the beginner route, she looked down at Preston with a huge grin. "I did it. You're a natural. Ready to try a harder one." They spent hours at the gym, Harper working progressively more difficult routes while Preston offered advice and encouragement. She loved watching him climb too, the fluid grace of his movement, the easy strength as he worked routes that looked impossible to her novice eyes. "That was amazing," Harper said later as they sat in the gym's cafe sharing a smoothie. "I'm going to feel this tomorrow, but it was worth it. You were great, really. Some people freeze up their first time, but you committed to the movement." That evening they went to dinner at a restaurant Preston said was one of the best in Boston, and Harper had to agree the food was exceptional. They talked about their work, their plans, the logistics of maintaining a relationship across 2 cities with 2 demanding careers. "I can come to New York most weekends," Preston said. "I have good people managing the factory floor, and a lot of my work can be done remotely if needed." "What's your schedule like?" "Saturdays are brutal," Harper admitted. "That's our busiest night. But I could potentially do Sunday through Tuesday if I plan ahead. Nadia can handle a few days without me once the new location planning settles down. So we trade off. I come to you, you come to me, we figure it out as we go. That works for me." They walked back to Preston's apartment through Boston streets, Harper bundled against the early spring chill. Inside, Preston built a fire in the fireplace while Harper curled up on his couch, and they stayed up late talking about everything and nothing. The kind of rambling conversation that happens when 2 people are so comfortable they don't need to perform or impress. Sunday morning was lazy and perfect. Preston made coffee and they drank it in bed, then eventually roused themselves for brunch at a place in the South End. Harper's train back to New York left late afternoon, and saying goodbye was harder than it had been in Miami. 2 weeks. Preston asked, holding her close on the platform. 1 week. I'll make it work. I need to see you before 2 weeks. His smile was brilliant. I was hoping you'd say that. The weeks that followed fell into a pattern. One of them would travel every weekend, sometimes Preston to New York, sometimes Harper to Boston. They explored each other's cities, favorite restaurants and hidden spots, the places that felt like home. Preston charmed Harper's business partner and restaurant staff. Harper impressed Preston's sister and friends with her humor and warmth. "He's different with you," Preston's sister Claire said during one visit. They were having coffee while Preston was in a meeting. "Happier, more relaxed. You're really good for him." "He's good for me too," Harper said. "I didn't realize how much I'd closed myself off to anything outside of work until I met him." The new restaurant location was moving forward, construction beginning on the Coral Gables space. Harper was splitting her time between New York and Miami for oversight, which made coordinating with Preston more complex, but not impossible. He flew down to Miami on his own plane several times, collecting her for weekend trips that didn't require commercial airlines. "I meant what I said," Preston told her on one of those flights. "You're never flying commercial again if I can help it." "That seems excessive." "Maybe, but watching you get stressed about flight delays and cancellations makes me want to eliminate the problem. Let me eliminate the problem." It was absurd and extravagant and incredibly thoughtful. Harper gave in, accepting that this was his way of taking care of her, of making her complicated life slightly easier. 3 months into their relationship, Preston asked Harper to take a week off to travel with him. "Real vacation," he said. "No work, no obligations, just a somewhere beautiful." "Where do you want to go?" They chose Italy, landing in Rome and making their way south through the countryside, eating incredible food, drinking local wine, exploring ancient ruins and modern art. It was the first real vacation Harper had taken since opening her restaurant, and she fell in love with both the country and the experience of traveling with Preston. "I could get used to this," Harper said as they sat at a cafe in the Amalfi Coast, watching the sun set over the Mediterranean. "So could I." Preston reached across the table to take her hand. "Harper, I know this is fast, but I need you to know I'm serious about this, about us. I'm in love with you." Harper felt her breath catch. They hadn't said those words yet, both of them cautious despite the intensity of their connection. But hearing Preston say it, seeing the vulnerability and certainty in his eyes, made her realize she'd been holding back unnecessarily. "I love you too," she said. "I think I have since Miami, but it seemed crazy to fall in love with someone that fast." "Why? Life's short. When you know, you know." They spent the rest of the week in a state of blissful honesty, no more holding back or protecting themselves, just pure connection and joy. By the time they flew back to the States, Harper felt like a different person than the stressed woman who had been standing in JFK 6 months ago, watching her flight get canceled. The Coral Gables restaurant opened in October to enthusiastic reviews and strong bookings. Harper and Nadia had pulled off something special, a space that felt both elegant and welcoming, with a menu that showcased Harper's vision and skill. Preston flew down for opening night, and Harper spotted him at a corner table, watching her work the room with undisguised pride. "You did it," he said later after the last customers had left and the staff was cleaning up. "This place is incredible. We did it. I couldn't have managed the travel and stress without you. You absolutely could have, but I'm glad I got to be part of it." That Christmas, Preston asked Harper to spend the holidays in Boston with his family. His mother was warm and welcoming. His sister Claire treated Harper like family already, and his extended family clearly approved of the woman who had captured Preston's heart. On Christmas Eve, after a family dinner, Preston took Harper for a walk through his neighborhood, streets decorated with lights, snow falling in gentle flurries. "I have a present for you," Preston said, stopping under a streetlight. "But I'm giving it to you now instead of tomorrow." "I like presents," Harper said, smiling up at him. Preston pulled a small box from his coat pocket, and Harper's heart started racing. He opened it to reveal a beautiful ring, a sapphire surrounded by small diamonds, elegant and unique. "Harper Greene, you changed my life the day I met you in that airport. Every day since then has been better because you're in it. I know we haven't been together that long by traditional standards, but I also know that I want to spend the rest of my life with you. Will you marry me?" Harper's eyes filled with tears, happy ones. "Yes, absolutely yes." Preston slipped the ring onto her finger, then kissed her thoroughly, snow falling around them like a movie scene. When they pulled apart, both laughing and crying, Harper felt a completeness she hadn't known she was missing. "I love you," she said. "I can't wait to marry you." They were married the following June, a wedding that combined Harper's New York friends and restaurant family with Preston's Boston connections. They held the ceremony in a restored barn in the Berkshires, with food from Harper's restaurants and a joy that was palpable to everyone present. "I'm marrying someone I met because of a canceled flight," Harper said in her vows, laughing through tears. "Someone who offered help to a stressed stranger and changed both of our lives. Someone who makes me braver, happier, better. I love you completely, Preston Irving, and I can't wait for everything that comes next. I'm marrying the woman I fell in love with the moment she decided to trust me, despite every true crime podcast telling her not to," Preston said, getting laughs from the assembled guests. "Someone brilliant and driven and kind, who makes every day an adventure. I love you, Harper, and I promise to keep offering you rides, whether on private jets or anywhere else life takes us." They honeymooned in Japan. 2 weeks of incredible food and culture, temples and cities, experiences they collected together. When they returned, Harper moved into Preston's Boston apartment, keeping her New York place for the nights she needed to be at the flagship restaurant, but making Boston her primary home. The adjustment was easier than either of them expected. Harper could reach New York quickly when needed, and her capable kitchen staff managed beautifully with her partial absence. Preston's work remained demanding, but having Harper at home transformed his relationship with the job. He left the office earlier, took actual vacations, found the balance he had been seeking for years. 2 years into their marriage, Harper opened a third restaurant, this one in Boston. Preston surprised her by purchasing the building so she would have creative freedom without landlord constraints. The restaurant was her most personal yet, combining everything she had learned from the previous 2 locations with new ideas and visions. "You keep making me better at what I do," Harper told Preston on opening night of the Boston location. They were stealing a moment alone in the office while the dining room buzzed with the first seating. "Supporting my crazy dreams, making them logistically possible, believing in me." "You make yourself better," Preston said. "I just remove obstacles and cheer loudly. That's more than enough." Their life together settled into a rhythm that worked for both of them. Busy but not overwhelmingly so, successful but not consumed by work, together more often than apart. They made friends as a couple, hosted dinner parties where Harper cooked elaborate meals and Preston told embarrassing stories, traveled to new places and returned to favorite ones. When Harper got pregnant 3 years after their wedding, they were both thrilled and terrified in equal measure. Preston turned one of the spare bedrooms into a nursery, painting walls and assembling furniture with an intensity that made Harper laugh. "The baby won't care if the crib is perfectly aligned with the window," she said, watching him measure for the third time. "I'll care. Our child deserves a perfectly aligned crib." Their daughter was born in early spring, a healthy baby girl they named Lily after Preston's grandmother. Harper took maternity leave from the restaurants, the longest break she had taken from work since opening the first location, and discovered that she loved being a mother almost as much as she loved being a chef. "We made a person," Preston said, staring down at Lily sleeping in his arms with an expression of wonder. "An entire person. She's perfect." "She is," Harper agreed, leaning against his shoulder. "We did good." Lily grew into a curious, energetic toddler who loved being in the restaurant kitchens with her mother and visiting the manufacturing facility with her father. Harper and Preston tag-teamed parenting around their work schedules, each of them scaling back hours to make family time a priority. 2 years after Lily, they had a son, James, who was calmer than his sister but equally loved. Their house became louder and messier and infinitely more joyful. "Remember when we were stressed about flights and business meetings?" Harper said one evening, surrounded by toys and children and chaos. Preston was building a block tower with Lily while James napped in a baby swing. "I remember thinking those things were important," Preston said. "Now I know better." On their 10-year anniversary, Preston surprised Harper with a trip back to Miami, staying at the same hotel where they had first spent time together. The city had changed, and so had they, but the feelings were the same. "You know what the best decision I ever made was?" Preston asked over dinner at the same restaurant where they had eaten on their first date. "Offering a stranger a ride on your plane." "Exactly that. One moment of deciding to help someone, and it gave me everything." He raised his glass. "To canceled flights and good decisions." "To trusting strangers and taking chances," Harper added, clinking her glass against his. They flew back to Boston the next day, back to their children and restaurants and businesses, back to the life they had built together from a single chance encounter in an airport. Harper never flew commercial again, not because she couldn't but because Preston had meant what he said about taking care of her, about removing obstacles, about making her complicated life easier wherever he could. Years continued to unfold, bringing successes and challenges, growth and change. Harper eventually stepped back from daily kitchen duties, focusing on concept development and mentoring young chefs while spending more time with her family. Preston expanded his company's international presence while maintaining the work-life balance he had learned was essential. Lily grew into a teenager interested in engineering like her father, while James showed an early aptitude for cooking like his mother. The restaurants thrived, the business prospered, and through it all Harper and Preston remained partners in every sense of the word, supporting each other's dreams and building a life neither had imagined when they met. Sometimes, when Harper was on Preston's plane flying to one location or another, she would think back to that stressed woman in JFK, watching her flight get canceled, feeling like her world was falling apart. She would think about the man who had appeared beside her with an unexpected offer, the leap of faith she had taken, the way one moment of chance had redirected everything. "What are you thinking about?" Preston asked during one of those flights, looking up from his laptop. "How grateful I am that my flight got canceled that day," Harper said. "How different everything might have been if I had made it onto that plane." Preston smiled, the same warm smile that had convinced her to trust him a decade earlier. "I'm grateful too, every single day." The plane carried them home through clear skies, toward the life they had built together, the family they had created, the love that had started with a stranger's kindness and grown into something neither of them could imagine living without. Harper had never flown commercial again, but more importantly, she had never looked back, never regretted the risk she took on a stressed evening in an airport when everything seemed to be going wrong. Sometimes the best things in life came from canceled plans and unexpected offers from strangers who turned out to be exactly what you needed, exactly when you needed them. Sometimes taking a chance led to everything you never knew you were missing. And sometimes, love really did happen as fast and thoroughly as it did in stories, transforming ordinary moments into extraordinary memories, building futures from chances encounters, creating forever from what began as just a ride on a plane. Harper and Preston's story became one they told their children, a reminder that kindness mattered, that taking calculated risks could lead to magic, that the best things in life often came when you were brave enough to trust. It was a story about canceled flights and private jets, about strangers who became lovers, who became partners, who became family. It was their story, unique and perfect, built from a single moment of decision to offer help and another moment of decision to accept it. And every time Harper boarded Preston's plane, settled into the familiar luxury, and watched the ground fall away beneath them, she smiled at the memory of where it all began, grateful beyond measure for the canceled flight that led her to the love of her life, and the future she never saw coming. The life they built together was better than any plans that got disrupted, any reservations that fell through, any carefully constructed schedules that went awry. Because sometimes the universe canceled your flight not to ruin your plans, but to redirect you towards something infinitely better than what you had imagined for yourself. Their love story was proof that fairy tales could happen in airports, that princes came disguised as helpful strangers with kind eyes, that saying yes to the unexpected could lead to everything you ever wanted and more. Harper never flew commercial again, but more importantly, she never stopped being grateful for the day she did, for the canceled flight that became the beginning of forever, for the man who offered her a seat on his plane and gave her a home in his heart instead.